The hall went silent, not the normal kind of silence, like when a singer finishes a song. This silence was heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Zara stepped onto the red carpet inside the most expensive hotel in Lagos. Bright chandeliers above her sparkled like 1,000 stars. The marble floor shined so clean it looked like a mirror. And then, something happened that made people forget how to breathe. One by one, the richest men and women in the hall, people who owned banks, oil companies, and luxury estates, lowered their heads. They bowed. For her. Zara froze for half a second. Not because she didn't expect respect, but because she didn't expect it to happen this fast, this openly, and this loudly, without a single word. A line of corporate staff in neat suits stood on both sides of the carpet, bending at the waist like she was royalty. Some even whispered, "Welcome, Ma," as if they had been waiting all their lives to say it. Zara's expensive Ankara blazer hugged her shoulders perfectly. Her shoulder-length black wig looked smooth and flawless. Her brown leather handbag sat proudly on her arm. She walked with slow, calm steps, elegant, steady, victorious. But her eyes? Her eyes were scanning the hall, because she knew the person she was looking for was here. Then she saw him, Abraham, her former boss. He stood near the front row, holding a glass cup he had forgotten to drink from. His expensive navy blue suit suddenly looked too tight on him, like his body had become stiff. His eyes were wide open, his mouth hung slightly, like he had started to talk, but his voice refused to come out. He looked like a man watching his own life crash in front of him. Zara didn't smile wider. She didn't wave. She didn't act like she had come to fight. She simply kept walking, while the hall bowed. And Abraham, he looked like he wanted the ground to open and swallow him. Because 2 days ago, Abraham had fired her like she was nothing. 2 days ago, she had been his maid. 2 days ago, she had stood inside his mansion kitchen, wearing a plain Maid uniform, holding a tray with shaking hands, while he looked at her like she was a toy he could break. And now every powerful person in Lagos was bowing for her. Abraham swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling quickly. No, this cannot be her, he whispered to himself. But it was her. Zara took her seat in the front row like she belonged there. Like she owned the air in the room, like she owned the hall, and Abraham's brain started to spin, because he remembered the message he had sent her the previous evening. A cruel little message, a message meant to mock her, a message meant to make her feel small, a message meant to remind her that she was poor and powerless. He had texted her, "Come to the gala tomorrow night. You'll see what you lost when you refused my offer." He had been smiling when he typed it, smiling like a villain in a movie. He had imagined Zara coming to the hotel in cheap clothes, standing outside, unable to enter. Or he imagined her entering and being laughed at by rich guests. That was the plan. A joke. A cruel joke. But now the joke had turned around and slapped him in the face. Hard. Zara sat quietly, her back straight. Her fingers rested calmly on her handbag. She looked relaxed, like someone who had been in luxury rooms her whole life. Meanwhile, Abraham's heart was pounding so loud he feared people could hear it. The stage lights flashed. A soft music played. Waiters moved around, serving drinks and expensive snacks. Cameras turned toward the stage. Everyone settled into their seats. The master of ceremony walked up with a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "Welcome to the annual business gala night, the night we celebrate winners, growth, and greatness." People clapped politely. Abraham forced a small smile, but sweat had started to build around his temple. He kept staring at Zara like she might disappear if he blinked too hard. Zara remained calm. The MC continued. "Tonight, the top companies will be announced based on this year's revenue performance." More claps. Abraham's company was expected to do well. That was why he was here. That was why he had wanted Zara to come and watch, so he could make her feel foolish for refusing him. The MC opened an envelope slowly, building suspense. "The 5th highest company," he announced. People clapped. Then the 4th. Then the 3rd. Each time, Abraham waited for his company name to be called, smiling with pride. But something strange was happening. His company was not being called. And as the names climbed higher, Abraham's confidence started to crumble. His throat dried. His palms began to sweat. He leaned closer to his assistant and whispered, "Why have they not called our name?" The assistant shrugged, looking confused too. Then, the MC paused dramatically. He smiled wider. "And now," the MC said slowly, "we will welcome the highest-earning company of the year." The hall leaned forward. Even waiters stopped walking for a second. Camera lights blinked. The MC lifted his hand like a man about to reveal a miracle. "Let's officially welcome," he began, "the silent billionaire CEO of Zara Group." The hall exploded. People stood up instantly, clapping, cheering, smiling. Some shouted, "Zara, Zara." Others lifted phones to record. The applause was so loud it felt like thunder. Abraham stood up too without even thinking. His knees felt weak. He clapped because everyone was clapping, but his face looked like a man who had been punched in the stomach, because the MC was still speaking. "The lady who chose to hide," the MC continued. "She tops this year's highest company earnings with $2 billion profit." The whole hall roared again, and then Zara stood up, slowly, smoothly, gracefully. And for the first time that night, she turned her full face toward Abraham. Her eyes met his, not angry, not screaming, just calm. But that calm was more dangerous than shouting. Abraham's hand stopped clapping. His lips trembled. His eyes widened even more. And as Zara stepped into the red carpet again, walking toward the stage, everyone made way for her like she was a queen. Abraham felt dizzy. His mind raced back to that night in his mansion, to his stupid request, to the way he had leaned close and spoken with a low voice. "Zara, if you want to keep your job, you know what to do. Is, offerand, of going." He remembered Zara's face that day, hurt, shocked, but strong. He remembered how she had stepped back and said, "Sir, I'm here to work, not to be used." He remembered how his pride had risen like fire. "How dare you reject me?" he had snapped. He had fired her on the spot, and now, the poor maid he had fired was walking to the stage as the billionaire CEO of Zara Group. Abraham's legs shook. He wanted the ground to open. He wanted the lights to go off. He wanted the microphone to break. But everything was working perfectly. Zara reached the stage. She took the microphone. The hall quieted down again. Even the air conditioning sounded loud. Zara looked across the crowd. Then she spoke softly, clearly, in a voice that carried power without shouting. "Sometimes," she said, "it's good to go low and undercover, so you can discover the evil and wickedness of some entrepreneurs in this country and what poor people go through in their hands." A murmur moved through the crowd. Abraham's heart nearly stopped. Zara continued, "I won't mention a name to protect the person and his business, but a week ago I went undercover to work as a maid for a top entrepreneur sitting in this hall." The room went cold. People turned their heads, looking around, trying to guess who she meant. Abraham's face drained of color. Zara's eyes slowly moved like a spotlight until they landed on Abraham again. "And yesterday evening," Zara said, "that same person sent me a message to attend today's gala, just so he could mock me." The crowd gasped. Abraham felt like he couldn't breathe. His fingers tightened around his glass cup. His hand shook. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. Zara had not just come to win an award. She had come with evidence. And she was about to expose him right there, in front of the whole world. Abraham's glass cup slipped a little in his hand. He caught it quickly, but the small clink it made sounded loud to him, like the hall had turned into a courtroom, and that tiny sound was a confession. Zara stood on the stage with the microphone, calm and steady. The bright lights above her made her Ankara blazer glow with rich colors. Her expensive wig sat perfectly on her shoulders. Her face looked peaceful, but her eyes carried a warning. Behind her, a giant screen showed the Zara Group logo, gold and bold like a stamp of authority. In front of her, the entire hall watched. Rich men in crisp suits, powerful women in sparkling gowns, government officials, bank CEOs, media cameras. Everyone had been clapping a minute ago. Now nobody was clapping. Nobody even knew if it was safe to blink, because Zara had just said something that made people feel uncomfortable. A billionaire worked undercover as a maid? A top entrepreneur tried to use her and then invited her to a gala to mock her? People didn't know if they should be shocked, angry, or scared. But Abraham knew exactly what he felt. Fear. The kind of fear that enters your bones. He forced a swallow, but his throat felt like dry sand. Zara continued speaking, her voice smooth like flowing water. Some people here, she said, treat workers like they are not human. They forget that a cleaner, a maid, a driver, a security guard all deserve respect. A soft murmur rose from the crowd. Abraham could feel eyes turning, not fully yet, but slowly, like a storm gathering. Zara paused, and the pause itself was powerful. Then she said, "This is not just about me. This is about the many poor people who are afraid to speak because they believe nobody will listen." The MC stood behind her with a tight smile, shifting nervously. Abraham's assistant leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, should we leave?" Abraham didn't answer. He couldn't move. It felt like if he stood up, the whole hall would turn and point. Zara lifted her chin a little. "I will not mention names," she repeated, "but I will give a lesson." Then she spoke the words that cut Abraham deeply. Treat people with dignity, because you never know who you are hurting. You never know who you are mocking, and you never know who has the power to change your entire life. The hall stayed quiet for 2 full seconds. Then the clapping started again, but it wasn't the happy clapping from earlier. This clapping felt like nervous support, like people were clapping to show they agreed, but also clapping to protect themselves. Some guests nodded strongly. Some whispered, "She's right." Some looked around, trying to locate the top entrepreneur. Abraham's heartbeat raced faster. He tried to smile, but his lips wouldn't obey. Zara's eyes moved across the crowd one last time. Then she ended her speech. "Thank you for your support," she said. "Everything Zara Group has achieved comes from hard work, honesty, and respect. I hope we all remember that." The hall erupted with applause again, this time louder. Zara handed the microphone back, and as she stepped down from the stage, the room rose to its feet. Everyone clapped as she walked. They smiled at her. They bowed slightly again. They made space for her, like she was the queen of Lagos business. Abraham stood too, clapping like a robot. But inside him, everything was collapsing, because he knew something the crowd didn't know yet. Zara had not said his name, but she could. And if she did, it would be the end of him. He watched Zara return to her seat in the front row. People leaned toward her, greeting her warmly. "Madam Zara, congratulations. You inspire us. We are honored." Abraham's stomach twisted. 2 days ago, he had called her poor girl. 2 days ago, he had acted like he owned her future. Now, the same people who once begged Abraham for partnerships were bending their heads for Zara. Abraham's mind flashed back to the day he fired her. It had been early morning in his mansion. The smell of coffee filled the air. Zara had been cleaning the glass table in the living room when Abraham walked in wearing a robe, acting like he owned the world. He had stopped close to her, too close. "Zara," he had said, smiling like he was doing her a favor. "Do you know how many girls will do anything just to work here?" Zara had kept her eyes down respectfully. "Yes, sir." He had leaned even closer. "Then don't act like you are special." Zara had stepped back slightly. "Sir, please, I came for work." Abraham's smile had turned cold. "And I'm offering you more than work." Zara's voice had shaken that day, but she had still stood firm. "No, sir, I will not do that." Abraham had felt insulted. His pride had screamed. So he fired her. "Get out," he had snapped. "You are done here." Zara had picked up her small bag and left quietly, not begging, not crying. Abraham had laughed after she left. He had told himself, "She will suffer outside. She will regret it. She will come back." Now, Abraham wanted to throw up. Because Zara had not come back to beg. She had returned to rise. The event continued. After Zara Group's announcement, the hall tried to return to celebration. Music played again. Waiters served food. Guests laughed, some too loudly, like they were pretending everything was normal. But Abraham couldn't relax. He kept glancing at Zara every few seconds. She looked calm, speaking softly with a group of CEOs. She smiled politely. She looked like someone who had nothing to fear. Abraham felt like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Then something happened. A woman in a gold gown leaned toward another woman and whispered loudly enough for Abraham to catch. "Who do you think she meant?" The other woman replied, "It must be someone big, someone arrogant." A man behind them said, "That kind of thing happens in Lagos. Many people hide their wickedness behind money." Another voice said, "If she knows and she is warning him publicly, then she has proof. Proof." That word hit Abraham like a slap. Because yes, Zara had proof. There were cameras in his mansion. There were staff. There were text messages. His stupid message inviting her to the gala. It was still on his phone. Abraham's hands started sweating again. He stood up suddenly. His assistant jumped. "Sir? I need air," Abraham muttered, forcing a smile. He walked away from his table, moving toward the hallway leading to the restroom area. As he walked, he noticed something strange. People were watching him. Not openly, not boldly, but watching, like they were trying to connect the dots. Abraham's steps became faster. He entered the hallway, breathing hard. He leaned on the wall for a moment, closing his eyes. Think, Abraham. Think. He had built his business with power and pride. He had used intimidation to control staff. He had always believed money made him untouchable. But tonight, money was not protecting him. Tonight, money was exposing him. He pulled out his phone quickly, opened his message app, and searched Zara's name. There it was, his last text, the one he had sent as a joke. He stared at it, feeling sick. Then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned sharply. 2 men in black suits stood at the end of the hallway. They weren't hotel staff. They looked like security, private security. Their eyes were focused, professional, serious. Abraham's chest tightened. One of the men walked closer and spoke politely. "Good evening, sir," he said. Abraham forced a smile. "Good evening. Can I help you?" The man nodded slightly. "Madam Zara requested that we escort you back into the hall." Abraham blinked. "Escort me? Why?" The man didn't smile. "Please, sir, this way." A cold fear crawled up Abraham's spine. Is she accusing me?" Abraham asked, his voice cracking a little. The man's face remained neutral. "Madam Zara did not accuse anyone by name. But she said she would like to speak to you." Abraham swallowed. "Speak to him? Right now? Here? In this hotel? In front of everyone?" His mind raced. Was she going to expose him more? Was she going to destroy him? His assistant had followed behind quietly, now standing a few steps away, looking worried. Abraham tried to act confident. "Fine," he said, straightening his suit. "Lead the way." They escorted him back toward the hall. As Abraham entered, the bright lights hit his face, and immediately he felt it. Eyes. So many eyes. People were watching him now, not just casually. With interest, with suspicion, the men escorted him straight toward Zara's table in the front row. Zara turned her head slowly and looked up at him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes said, "I knew you would come." Abraham's mouth opened, but no words came out. Then Zara spoke softly, but clearly. "Sit down, Mr. Abraham." Abraham sat down slowly, his hands shaking under the table. Zara leaned closer, her voice low so only he could hear. "You're scared," she said. Abraham's face tightened. "Zara, please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who you were." Zara's lips curved into a small, cold smile. "That's the point," she whispered. "You treated me badly because you believed I was nobody." Abraham's eyes filled with panic. "I'm sorry," he pleaded quietly. "I made a mistake." Zara stared at him, then said something that made Abraham's blood run cold. "I have everything recorded." Unquote. Abraham's heart almost stopped. His eyes widened like a child caught stealing. Zara continued, still calm. "And I can ruin you with one sentence." Abraham's lips trembled. He leaned closer, voice shaking. "Please, don't. I'll do anything." Zara's gaze stayed firm. Then she said, "Stand up." Abraham froze. "Stand up?" "Yes," Zara said. "Stand up, smile, and walk with me." Abraham stared at her like she had asked him to jump into fire. "Walk? With you? To where?" he whispered. Zara slowly rose from her seat. "To the stage," she said. Abraham's entire body went cold, because the stage meant microphones, cameras, public attention. And if Zara took him there, he didn't know if he would survive what came next. Zara adjusted her handbag on her arm and looked at him with calm authority. "Now," she repeated, and Abraham, the billionaire who once fired her like trash, slowly stood up. As the entire hall began to notice, the moment Abraham stood up, the noise in the hall slowly faded. Not because the music stopped, but because people noticed him. A billionaire walking beside another billionaire was normal. but a billionaire walking stiffly, pale and nervous behind Zara, like a child being led to the principal's office that was not normal. Zara stepped forward first. Abraham followed. The red carpet seemed longer than before. Every step Abraham took felt heavy, like his shoes were filled with stones. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He could feel sweat forming under his collar, even though the hall was cool. People whispered, "Is that Abraham? Why is he walking with her? Did you see his face?" Something is wrong. Eyes narrowed, cameras turned, phones lifted. Zara walked calmly, her head high, her posture perfect. She did not rush him. She did not pull him. But somehow, Abraham felt dragged. When they reached the stage, the MC stepped back instinctively. He looked confused but respectful. He handed the microphone back to Zara without a word. Zara took it. She didn't speak immediately. She stood there for a moment, looking at the crowd. Then she turned slightly and looked at Abraham. He stood beside her, stiff, hands locked together, eyes fixed on the floor. "Look at them," Zara said quietly to him, but the microphone caught it. "Look at the people." Abraham slowly raised his head. Hundreds of eyes stared back. Some curious, some cold, some sharp, some judging. Zara then faced the crowd again. "I want to be clear," she said calmly. "I didn't bring Mr. Abraham here to disgrace him." A few people breathed out in relief. Abraham's shoulders loosened slightly. "But," Zara continued, "I brought him here because accountability matters." The relief vanished. Abraham's chest tightened again. Zara spoke gently, but every word landed hard. "Power without character is dangerous. Wealth without discipline destroys lives." She turned slightly toward Abraham again. "This man is not the worst," she said. "He is simply a mirror of what happens when society protects bad behavior because money is involved." Murmurs filled the hall. Abraham's face burned. Zara then did something unexpected. She handed Abraham the microphone. A sharp gasp moved through the crowd. Abraham's eyes widened in panic. "Me?" he whispered. "Yes," Zara said quietly. "You." His hands shook as he took the microphone. He looked at Zara, hoping for mercy. Her face showed none. She stepped back slightly, giving him space but not escape. Abraham cleared his throat. Nothing came out. He cleared it again. Still nothing. The silence stretched. Finally, he spoke. I didn't know," he said weakly. A few people frowned. Zara tilted her head slightly. "Didn't know what?" she asked calmly. Abraham swallowed. "I didn't know who she was," he said, his voice cracking. Zara didn't interrupt. She let him continue. "I believed she was poor," Abraham said. "I believed she had no power." Some people shook their heads. Some crossed their arms. "And because of that," Zara asked, "how did you treat her?" Abraham froze. The truth stood in front of him like a wall. If he lied, Zara could expose him. If he told the truth, he would shame himself. He hesitated too long. Zara leaned closer and spoke into the microphone softly but sharply. "Mr. Abraham, this is your chance to be honest." Abraham's shoulders dropped. "I treated her badly," he admitted. The crowd reacted immediately. A low sound of shock and anger moved across the hall. Zara stayed silent. "I abused my position," Abraham continued, his voice shaking now. "I asked for something I had no right to ask for." Some women in the crowd gasped. A man muttered, "Shame." "And when she refused," Abraham said, his voice breaking, "I fired her." The hall exploded. Voices rose. People whispered loudly. Phones recorded everything. Abraham stood exposed. Zara raised her hand slightly. The noise slowly died down. She looked at Abraham. "And after you fired her?" she asked. Abraham closed his eyes briefly. "I mocked her," he said quietly. "I invited her here to laugh at her." Silence crashed into the hall like a wave. Even the MC looked shocked. Zara nodded slowly. Then she turned to the crowd. "This," she said clearly, "is the reality many workers face." She took the microphone back from Abraham. "He didn't know who I was," Zara continued, "and that is exactly why this experiment mattered." Experiment. That word echoed. "Because if you only treat people well when they are rich," Zara said, "then you are not kind. You are afraid." Strong clapping broke out. Not polite clapping. Not nervous clapping. Real clapping. People stood. Some nodded fiercely. Some women wiped tears. Zara raised her voice just a little. "I went undercover for one reason," she said. "To see how the powerless are treated." She turned slightly and gestured toward Abraham. "This is not about destroying him," she said. "It is about changing him." Abraham looked at her, stunned. Zara turned back to the audience. "He may escape consequences today," she said. "But let this be known, if I ever hear of him or anyone like him repeating this behavior, I will not stay silent." The hall burst into applause again. Abraham felt weak. He had expected destruction. But this was worse, because she spared him publicly, and that meant he had to live with the shame. Zara stepped down from the stage. She did not look back. Abraham remained standing there, alone, exposed, shaking. The MC awkwardly returned to the microphone and tried to continue the program, but the energy had changed. The gala ended not long after. People left in clusters, whispering, discussing, analyzing. Some shook Abraham's hand stiffly. Some avoided him completely. Some gave him looks filled with disappointment. Abraham felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Outside the hotel, the Lagos night air was warm. Cars lined up. Flashes from cameras lit the driveway. Zara walked out, surrounded by her security team. Reporters tried to reach her. "Madam Zara, can you comment? Is Abraham guilty?" Zara didn't answer. She got into her car calmly and drove away. Abraham stood by his own car, watching the taillights disappear. His chest felt hollow. That night, he did not sleep. He sat alone in his mansion living room, lights off, replaying everything. Her words, her eyes, her calm power. By morning, the news had spread. Blogs, social media, business forums. Headlines read, "Silent billionaire exposes workplace abuse at Lagos Gala. CEO confesses live on stage." Abraham's phone did not stop ringing. Partners called. Lawyers called. His board demanded explanations. His reputation trembled on the edge. By evening, Abraham made a decision. He traced Zara's address. Not to threaten, not to argue, but to beg. That night, his driver stopped in front of a massive gate. A security guard checked him carefully. After a long pause, the gate opened. Abraham walked inside. The house was quiet. Soft lights glowed. He was led into a large living room. And there, Zara sat on the sofa, relaxed, elegant, holding a glass of juice. She looked up as he entered. Abraham didn't wait. The moment he saw her, he dropped to his knees. The sound echoed through the room. Tears rolled down his face. "I'm sorry," he cried. "Please forgive me." Zara watched him silently, for a long time. Then she spoke. "You can stand," she said calmly. Abraham shook his head. "I don't deserve to," he whispered. Zara's eyes softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. "Forgiveness does not erase responsibility," she said. "Change does." Abraham nodded desperately. "I will change," he promised. "I swear." Zara stood up slowly. She walked closer. She looked down at him. "Then prove it," she said. Abraham looked up, hope flickering. "How?" he asked. Zara's answer came slowly. "Start by fixing what you broke," she said. "And be ready. Because redemption is not cheap." Abraham nodded eagerly. "I'll do anything." Zara paused. Then she said something that made his breath catch. "Good," she said. "Because tomorrow morning, I will test you again." Abraham froze. Test him again? How? Why? Before he could ask, Zara turned away and walked toward the hallway. "Go home," she said over her shoulder. "Tomorrow decides who you truly are." The guards gently helped Abraham to his feet and escorted him out. As Abraham stepped into the night, his mind raced. What test? What did she mean? And more importantly, would he pass it? Abraham did not sleep that night. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, the lights off, the room quiet, yet his mind loud like a market. Zara's voice kept repeating in his head. Tomorrow decides who you truly are. What kind of test was that? For years, Abraham had lived without fear. Money had always solved his problems. When staff complained, he replaced them. When partners argued, he overpowered them. When guilt tried to visit, he drowned it with luxury. But tonight, guilt sat beside him like an unwanted guest. At exactly 5:12 a.m., Abraham stood up. He didn't call his assistant. He didn't call his driver. He didn't wear his usual tailored suit. Instead, he wore a plain shirt and dark trousers. When his driver offered to follow him, Abraham shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "Today I go alone." As the sun rose over Lagos, Abraham drove himself through streets he had not truly seen in years. He passed busy junctions, roadside sellers, schoolchildren walking with worn bags, women carrying goods on their heads. These were the people he had always ignored. At 7 a.m., his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Address sent. Be there in 30 minutes. Don't be late. Below it was a location pin. Abraham tapped the map. His stomach tightened. It wasn't an office. It wasn't a mansion. It was a crowded area on the outskirts of the city. A poor neighborhood. Abraham arrived early. The road was narrow. Houses were small, close together, some with cracked walls and rusty gates. Children ran barefoot. The smell of fried food mixed with dust. People stared at his car. Not because it was fancy he had chosen a simple one, but because he looked out of place. At exactly 7:30 a.m., his phone rang. Zara's voice came through, calm as ever. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late," Abraham replied. "Good," Zara said. "Get out of the car." Abraham obeyed. "Walk to the yellow building," Zara continued. "The one with the broken fence." Abraham looked around and spotted it. He walked. With each step, he felt exposed. People watched him closely now. He reached the building. "Knock," Zara instructed. Abraham raised his hand and knocked. An elderly woman opened the door. She looked tired, thin. Her wrapper was faded. Her eyes were wary. "Yes?" she asked. Abraham swallowed. "Good morning, Ma." The woman studied him. "Who are you?" Before Abraham could answer, Zara's voice came again through the phone, loud enough for the woman to hear. "Madam," Zara said kindly, "this man is here to help you today." The woman frowned. "Help me?" "Yes," Zara said. "Let him in." The woman hesitated, then stepped aside. Abraham entered the small room. It was hot. Simple furniture. No luxury. Just life. Zara's voice continued, calm but firm. "This woman," she said, "worked as a cleaner in one of your office buildings." Abraham froze. The woman looked up sharply. "Office building?" "Yes," Zara said. "She was laid off 3 months ago." Abraham's heart dropped. "I didn't know," he started. Zara cut in gently but sharply. "You didn't know because you didn't care." The woman crossed her arms. "They told me the company was restructuring," she said bitterly. "No pay. No warning." Abraham's chest burned. Zara spoke again. "She couldn't pay rent," Zara said. "Her husband is sick. Her grandson dropped out of school." Abraham felt dizzy. "I want you," Zara said, "to sit down and listen." Abraham sat on a wooden chair. For the next 30 minutes, he listened. The woman spoke about hunger, about borrowing money, about shame, about begging neighbors. Abraham had heard business losses before, but he had never heard loss like this. When the woman finished, Zara spoke again. "Now," she said, "you will fix this." "How?" Abraham asked quickly. "You'll start by apologizing," Zara replied. Abraham turned to the woman. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't see you. I didn't protect you. I failed." The woman stared at him. She didn't smile. She didn't forgive him immediately. But she nodded slowly. Zara continued. "You will pay her owed wages, cover her rent for 1 year, pay school fees, and ensure medical care for her husband." Abraham nodded. "I will. And that's just the beginning," Zara said. The call ended. Abraham sat there for a moment, shaken. That day did not end there. The next message came 1 hour later. Another address. Another test. A young man injured at work. A security guard fired for speaking up. A driver blamed for an accident he didn't cause. Each place Abraham went, the story was the same. People hurt. People silenced. People crushed under power. By evening, Abraham was exhausted. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. His pride had been stripped piece by piece. At sunset, Zara finally called again. "You've done well today," she said. Abraham leaned against his car, sweat on his face. "Is that all?" "No," Zara replied. "This was just listening." Abraham laughed weakly. "Just listening. Tomorrow," Zara said, "you act." The next morning, Abraham called an emergency board meeting. His executives rushed in, confused. Abraham stood before them, not smiling. "We are changing everything," he said. They stared. Employee protection policies, anonymous reporting, immediate compensation reviews. One executive protested. "This will cost." Abraham raised his hand. "I don't care." Silence fell. He continued, "Anyone found abusing power is gone. I don't care how profitable they are." Shock rippled through the room. He resigned as chairman temporarily, appointed an independent ethics team, publicly announced a foundation to support laid-off workers. The media went wild. Some praised him. Some doubted him. Some said it was a stunt. But Abraham didn't stop. Weeks passed. Then months. True to his promise, Abraham changed. He became a philanthropist. He funded shelters, food programs, education grants. When he opened an orphanage home, Zara stood beside him. And when she donated $1 million, the crowd applauded loudly. People started to believe. Slowly, Abraham and Zara began to meet often. At first, it was business, careful, professional. Then it became dinner meetings, long conversations, shared laughter, shared values. Zara watched him closely, always watching. One evening, Abraham invited Zara to his garden. Soft lights, quiet music, the city distant. He knelt down slowly. "Zara," he said, voice shaking, "I was arrogant and blind because of wealth. You changed me. You showed me life beyond money. Please allow me to be part of your life forever." Tears filled Zara's eyes. She said yes. Their wedding shook the city. 2 years later, they welcomed a baby boy, Solomon. But even as Abraham held his child, Zara stood quietly by the window one night, staring into the darkness. Because redemption has enemies, and not everyone was happy with Abraham's transformation. Some powerful people were watching, waiting, and planning. And Zara knew something Abraham did not yet know. The past never lets go easily. The rain started gently, not the angry kind that flooded streets, but a soft Lagos rain that fell like a reminder, quiet, steady, patient. Zara stood by the wide glass window of her mansion, one hand resting on the curtain, the other on her growing stomach. The city lights blinked outside, but her mind was far away. She had learned something over the years. Change always comes with resistance. And when powerful people lose control, they don't clap, they fight back. Behind her, Abraham rocked their baby boy, Solomon, gently in his arms. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that once again hovered around his parents' lives. "You've been quiet," Abraham said softly. Zara turned and smiled. "Just thinking." Abraham walked closer. "About what?" "About how far we've come," she replied, "and how fragile good things can be." Abraham nodded slowly. He understood that feeling now better than anyone. Since the gala night, his life had changed completely. Some business partners left him. Some mocked him behind closed doors. Some powerful men, the same ones who once praised his arrogance, now called him weak. They didn't like what he represented anymore, because Abraham's change had exposed them. And exposure is dangerous. 2 days later, it happened. Abraham received a call while in his office. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "there's an investigation request. They're accusing you of financial misconduct from years ago." Abraham closed his eyes. He knew this was coming. Old enemies don't forgive. They wait. "They want to destroy everything," Abraham told Zara later that evening. "They're digging into the past, deals I made before I changed. Some of them weren't clean." Zara listened carefully. She did not panic. She did not raise her voice. She simply asked one question. "Are you ready to face it?" Abraham looked at her. "I am." And for the first time in his life, he meant it. The investigation was brutal. Media houses returned. Headlines screamed again. People whispered again. Some said, "He was always bad." Some said, "This is karma." Others waited to see Zara's reaction, because many believed she would walk away. But Zara didn't. She stood beside Abraham, not to protect lies, but to protect truth. At a press conference, Abraham stood before cameras. Zara stood beside him, calm and strong. "I will not deny my past," Abraham said clearly. "Before I changed, I made choices driven by greed and pride. If I am found guilty of any wrongdoing, I will accept the consequences." The hall fell silent. No excuses, no blaming, no hiding. Zara then spoke. Redemption is not pretending the past didn't happen, she said. It is facing it honestly and choosing better every day. The investigation lasted months. Some charges stuck. Some didn't. Abraham paid fines, returned money, lost contracts. But he didn't fight dirty. He didn't run. He didn't hide behind lawyers to silence victims. And slowly, something unexpected happened. Public opinion shifted. People began to say, at least he owned it. Most people never do. The orphanage Abraham opened continued to grow. The foundation fed thousands. The same woman from the yellow building became a supervisor there. The security guard Zara had defended now trained others. Lives changed. Real lives, not stories. Then came the wedding anniversary gala. The same hotel. The same red carpet, but a different energy. Zara arrived first this time, holding Solomon's hand. The boy was small but proud. Guests stood again, but this time nobody bowed out of fear or wealth. They bowed out of respect. Abraham followed behind them, walking humbly, his shoulders lighter than they had ever been. The MC smiled warmly. Tonight, he said, we celebrate growth, not profit. Character, not power. Applause filled the hall. Zara was invited to speak. She stepped forward and looked around. Her eyes met familiar faces. Some ashamed, some changed, some learning. Years ago, Zara said, I walked into this hall as a maid people wanted to mock. A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Tonight, she continued, I walk in as a woman who believes one truth. Dignity is not earned by money. It is owed to everyone. She paused. And if you remember only one thing from our story, let it be this. How you treat the weakest person you meet says everything about who you are. Is it Dom? The hall stood, clapped. Some cried. Abraham watched her with pride, not because she was powerful, but because she was right. Later that night, as fireworks lit the Lagos sky, Abraham and Zara stood together in the garden. Solomon laughed as lights burst above. Abraham took Zara's hand. Thank you, he said quietly, for not destroying me when you could. Zara smiled gently. I didn't come to destroy you, Abraham. I came to reveal you. What you became after that was your choice. Abraham nodded. I will spend my life making sure Solomon grows up knowing that. Zara looked at their son, then back at Abraham. So will I. As guests left the gala, one thing was clear. The joke Abraham once planned had changed his destiny. The maid he mocked became the mirror that saved him, and the red carpet that once exposed his shame became the place where his redemption was finally complete. That night, Lagos did not just witness a love story. It witnessed a lesson that would travel far beyond that hall, because somewhere out there, another powerful man was watching, and somewhere else, a nobody was standing quietly, unaware that their moment to rise was coming. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.